Yes. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to this result webinar, Digitalization and Resilience. Just a very short, brief and rapid presentation. Today we have two guests, Ana Correia de Barros and Luca Jelovkan. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing correctly your family name. And then we have Martin Kruse for some comments, and Caterina Rondoni managing for answer at the end of the two presentations. Please for participants, you can and make an answer using the button Q&A, question and answer. About the project, many of you already know the project, but is useful for some newcomers. Future Resilience is a project aiming to strengthen the European economic and social resilience. And the project was organizing 10 future resilience labs. You can see the localization, and these labs were very, very effective and successful. And some images about the partners and people, some moments, some key facts and figures. There were 45 applications and 7 labs were funded in 7 different countries, and you can see the numbers. And the 10 labs were involving 130 stakeholders and organizing 40 workshops during the activities, etc. And this is the methodological approach. We have no time, of course, to explain all the phases, but it's useful. And then, if you are interested, there will be the video, the registration, the recording of this seminar. We have 4 pillars, 4 or 5 pillars. One very important, the knowledge-based contributions. There are a lot of documents and data, etc. Some policy briefs you can download. You can search from the different topics that were considered by the project Future Resilience, and the labs, flyers, in the YouTube channel with all the records of the different seminars, etc. And this is the not the last, but the last seminars will be on July 16th at the same hour of everything. So thank you for the attention, and now I leave the floor to Ana Correia. Ana, you have to open the microphone.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I trust that you can see the slides now. All right, so thank you for being here today. My name is Ana Correia de Barros. I'm a senior scientist at Fraunhofer Portugal ICOS. This is a research center on digital technologies. We mostly work on health and manufacturing. My background is in design. We were working in this lab together with DST. This is a large company in Portugal that works in different areas, but has 3 industrial units in woodworking and aluminum transformation and welding that took part in this lab. And although I'm here presenting, I'm part of a much larger team. So at Fraunhofer, I had other designers and design researchers working with me, my colleague Inês, Marianne, Philippe, Vitor, Ruben. We also had the fantastic collaboration of operators from DST, manufacturing operators. I will let you know more about them in a minute. They came from the 3 industrial units that I just told you about. We had the mentorship, great mentorship from the University of Urbino and the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. And of course, the mentorship and guidance of Matthias Barberis, the coordinator of the Future Resilience Project. And in the Fictions Lab, we were very inspired by this report of a group of experts to the European Commission that suggested trying to make Europe the center of gravity of future quality jobs. And they talked a lot about how digitalization, digital transformation is being done. And they argued that it hasn't been worker-centered, and this is giving rise to a series of issues. So we wanted to address this, and in particular, we wanted to address technological disruptions and skill gaps in the manufacturing sector. This is also a sector that the report highlights as being a critical one to Europe. And this is because it is already facing high labor shortages, and it is experiencing already technological disruptions and expected to experience a lot more. And these labor market shocks are a significant threat to the European Union, economically, socially. So we wanted to look at this through a different lens and try to think about technological disruptions and skill gaps from a worker-centered perspective. And this meant involving the workers in the process. And ultimately, we wanted to come up with methods or recommendations to contribute to this goal of promoting good quality jobs in Europe. So this was our methodological approach. At Fraunhofer, we usually invite the experts into the process of designing. And so the experts are not us, the technologists or the designers, but the people who will be using the technology, and in this case, manufacturing operators. So we consider them to be experts. And we invited these experts to take part in our project from the DST company. Now, we did not involve all the manufacturing operators from these units. Instead, we decided to use a lead user approach. So this lead user concept is something used in innovation studies. This is a term coined by von Hippel. And these lead users are people who are especially motivated to take part in a process that, for instance, know a lot more about digital technology or motivated to learn more, who are willing to speak on behalf of others. So have just a different drive or a stronger drive. And we wanted to work with lead users. And usually in these participatory processes, we expect these experts to contribute with the experience that they already have to the process. But in this case, we wanted to look into the future, and in particular about technological disruptions. So we thought it would be important to train the workers on emerging technologies and what is already out there and what is expected to come. And so this was an innovation that we did in the participatory design process. So we provided training to our lead users on emerging technologies like generative AI, digital twins, cobots, and things like that. And then, equipped with that knowledge, we started a series of regular workshops with these lead users, with the manufacturing operators, whereby one workshop would inform the next. So effectively, we engaged in participatory speculative design. So together, in participation, we were thinking and speculating about the future. But we didn't just involve workers. So we involved a lot more. So we used extensively the knowledge base by the Future Resilience Project. And the first reason for that is that we are designers and technologists and did not know the first thing about policy and policy making, which was something that we wanted to contribute to. So we learned about policy we learned about policy instruments. We learned about things that were already happening in our geographies for this project. So we wanted to learn about that and also be able to share that knowledge with the workers. And also, we were touching upon many different areas. So if we're thinking about work, we're looking at ergonomics, occupational safety and health, work psychology. So we did not have the domain over all of these fields. So we invited external experts on these fields to help us out in the project, to steer the project in the beginning and to evaluate it in the end. And we also made extensive use of academic literature in our fields and in these other fields that I just mentioned. And before starting the workshops, we wanted also to get a feel about the attitudes of the workers towards technologies. So we launched a survey at the company DST to understand attitudes towards digital technologies at work. We had 34 participants filling in the survey, and we came up with 3 clusters of respondents. And generally, what we saw was quite a positive attitude towards digital technologies, which we weren't expecting, and a lot of discourse on how technology would come and help productivity. So kind of a business lens, which was surprising for us. So we showed this to our experts in the first workshop. We showed also what we had learned from the knowledge base, as I said, and we also asked them to think about factors that were expected to play a role in the future. So societal, technological, environmental, etc. All of these factors. This was a steeple analysis, known as a steeple analysis. And we, in this workshop, discuss what could be the main problem we should focus on and what would be the factors that we should look more into. So out of this workshop came with the experts the problem definition and 10 factors to consider for the future. And with this information, we went back to the operators and did a first workshop with them. And in this workshop, we said, okay, this is the problem. Technological disruptions and skill gaps might have a negative impact on workers' well-being. And these are the 10 factors that we expect to play a role. We provided evidence on those factors and some trends. We also had some time to discuss whether or not everyone agreed with those factors. It turned out they did. And then we asked the workers to place the factors on a matrix of impact and uncertainty. And what we got to was a cluster of 4 factors that workers wanted to focus on from that moment onwards. And so we decided to focus on aging, migrations, resource shortage, including water shortage, and recognition and safety at work. And so we wanted then to see how these factors would play out or expected to play out in the workplace. And to try to make it kind of real and not some dystopian or utopian vision of the future, we asked the company, so whenever you have to communicate with the workers, how do you do that? And they said that they use these posters throughout the company with this look and feel. Okay, so we asked for permission to replicate those posters. We speculated about actions that the company might be taking if these factors were happening. So for instance, if there is severe water shortage, what might the company be doing? So we imagined this speculative scenario where the company had implemented schedules to access water in the workplace and designated areas to access water in the workplace. And so we spread out these scenarios to the workers. And we also gave them large pictures of their current working environments. And we said, okay, so these are the actions that the company is taking. What is different in your environment when these actions are happening? And so they made collages. And we discussed the results of these collages and their views of the impacts of these actions. So what we saw in these collages and in this workshop was that there was a lot of techno-solutionism, which was quite surprising. So there was a lot of calls for digitalization, automation, no concern whatsoever with technological surveillance. There was a concern with communication across languages, as many and many, more and more people start speaking different languages at work. There was a concern with the physical burden, with the aging workforce, but there was also an openness to changing the jobs or the doing tasks differently or doing different tasks. And the exercise also allowed the workers to engage in systemic thinking. So they would think, okay, I expect this change to be seen in this sector, but this will have implications on that team. This will have implications on that other area of the factory. So this was a really interesting exercise to understand the ripple effect of these actions. And so looking at these results, we wanted to kind of provoke the workers to look at this techno-solutionism from a different point of view. And we said, okay, so these are your wishes and needs for technology. So let's build that technology. And again, we asked the company to give us something to work on. In this case, we asked them to give us a garment that they usually give out to workers. And we hacked that garment to make a prototype. So this is a prototype. This is in Portuguese, I'm sorry, but this is a prototype that features instant translation with a microphone and a headset so that you can speak in understand different languages with your coworkers. It monitors vital signs. It has an upper limb exoskeleton, and it also has this light that turns green whenever you can access water. So we brought back these ideas in a form of a prototype to provoke discussion. So actually in speculative design, this is called a provotype because it's meant to provoke this discussion. And we said, okay, so here are your wishes come true. Do you feel any different about the last workshop? And so we were discussing what would be the implications of having something like this at work. And what we found out in this workshop was that workers considered that this would bring implications for the types of jobs that they would be doing, for the control they would have over how to do their tasks, for the level of demand that was expected to increase, for the kind of support that they would have, and for the social interactions. And for those of you who work in the field of activity ergonomics or work psychology, these are factors that are critical in defining job quality. This is a job control demand support model. So we see that the technology is expected to have implications in all of these domains that define job quality. And workers consider that maybe if it can protect us from musculoskeletal disorders, but we expect it to have a nefarious effect on our mental health, for instance. So the artifacts were useful in this sense. And then having done all of this reflection and prototypes and speculation, we wanted the workers to come up with recommendations for different stakeholders that are involved in digital transformation. So we wanted them to come up with recommendations for employers who decide what technology to buy, for technologists who create the technology, for lawmakers, and for future generations. And so rather than asking them to write something in a typical format of a policy instrument or a suggestion, because none of us knew how to do it, we tried to make it kind of lightweight. And so we divided the workers into 4 groups, and each would address a stakeholder. And we gave them different tasks. So the group working on recommendations for employers had to make their recommendations in the form of book covers. So we asked them, okay, so write the title and maybe a short explanation of the book. And this will be the recommendations for employers. And this was inspired by the fact that this company invests strongly in reading and culture, and the CEO himself is an avid reader. Then for technologists, we created a game board sorry, a board game, and we asked them to create cards with instructions for the game. So whenever you would fall into a green place, this was an instruction to move forward. And whenever you fell into a red place, you would have an instruction to move back. So for instance, if your technology is provoking stress, then you would have to come back or stay still until the next round of playing. For the legislators, we asked the workers to create demonstration banners. And for future generations, we asked them to create a message in a bottle. And so then we did a final exhibition with all of these prototypes and explaining all of the participatory speculative design process that we did. And for the inauguration of this exhibition, we invited the operators who had done all of this work with us, and we also invited the experts again. So what we presented in this workshop beyond the exhibition were characteristics of our process and then the recommendations. So for our process, we did recruitment through employer, which is not so common, and we wanted to get the feedback on that choice. We did the training on emerging technology, which was quite an innovation in participatory design. We decided to work with lead users, and we use these techniques. So we use design itself and the artifacts themselves to represent the future. And then in policy recommendations, we had a bunch, like guaranteeing that technology for the workplace is assessed for physical and psychosocial risks, or guaranteeing that decision makers in companies have training on cybersecurity, and so forth. And so the workers and the experts discussed the outcomes, so both the recommendations and the process that we propose in this project. And in the end, we also ran the survey again, the initial survey on the attitudes towards digital technology to see whether our workshops had any effect on the lead users. The results are not very robust because we did not have the same number of answers, and anyway, our sample was quite small, but they indicate that there were some changes on those who took part in the workshop, and I will tell you about that in a minute. So in our project, to sum up, we suggested a methodological approach to involve workers in speculating about the future of digital transformation in manufacturing. We saw that artifacts were of great value to facilitate discussions. So they were able to connect the thoughts of researchers, designers, and the workers, connect the present with the future, and connect everyday actions with a level of policy making. We also saw pre and post survey differences, namely that operators gained a critical stance regarding their rights, regarding occupational safety and health regulations, and workplace digitalization. They were also more aware of what they did not know, but we think that is a common outcome when you learn something, and this is something that operators also verbalize. And they felt heard. They continuously said that this was very important to them. Experts, on their turn, found the recommendations, the policy recommendations, to be pertinent, albeit with different degrees of feasibility for implementation. But they all agreed that the process was highly valuable and could be replicated in other contexts. And just to finalize my presentation, a note on the access to policymakers. So we did not have a lot of access to policymakers prior to this project. Those who did engaged in our project, and we did a lot of cold contacts, which surprisingly worked quite well. And we also noticed that social media helped, and the fact that we had these artifacts to share, we think that also helped to raise attention. And this ultimately gave us good engagement with the first workshop in the beginning and the final workshop of validation of project results. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your very interesting presentation. And I remember to the participants, we will have time for questions after the second presentation. So I will give the floor to Luca for his presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello. Can you hear the shared screen? Can you see? Not the hear. Yeah.
We can see it, but not in full
Yep.
screen.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the word, and thank you, Anna, for a very interesting presentation. Now I feel bad because my presentation is not that design interesting, but when I heard that your background is in design, I understand why. So yeah, of course, thanks to everybody also who joined this webinar. For those that do not know me, my name is Luca Elochan, and for the past year and a half, I have been the project leader and coordinator of the Future Resilience pilot project called Slovenian Cyber Resilience Lab. And if you have not guessed by the name, our topic generally was cybersecurity in Slovenia. So in this, we are also, I think, a little bit special amongst other labs, because our topic actually was directed on the national level. So not on the level of an individual organization or a local community. We dealt with the national level and with national policies, meaning that also our activities and results were a little bit more policy oriented, but more on that later. So to quickly go over the core team of the Slovenian Cyber Resilience Lab, I also believe that our consortium was the biggest among the pilot projects, consisting of six organizations. So the SGB Security Consulting, the lead partner of the project. Then we had Cresco Innovation, which is an industry partner who's working quite a lot with startup and development communities. Then we had two research partners, the Institute for Security and Strategic Research and the University of Maribor Faculty of Criminal Justice and Security. And then we had also the two industry partners in Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia and Primorska Technology Park. As far as the team goes, Mr. Jure Tomc was the number two man on the project. He joined as the industry and policy expert, and he's on vacation, so he cannot be with us today. Then we had Ms. Kaja Prislen-Mihelic, PhD, and Andrzej Mihelic, PhD from University of Maribor, who are the research leaders on the project. Ms. Ines Vlahovic, who joined from the Chamber of Commerce of Slovenia as industry and policy expert. Mr. Aleš Trontel and Ms. Bernarda Škrabar-Damjanovic as security and policy experts from the Institute, and Mr. Mitja Mikuš from Primorska Technology Park as industry and policy expert. And of course, we had the full support from the Future Resilience Consortium and especially Martin from the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, where the collaboration was really great. So as mentioned, our lab initially came up with the idea or applied with the project idea to work on cyber resilience of Slovenian startup and research and development communities. We wanted to know, first of all, what is the current state of cybersecurity and cyber resilience in these communities? More importantly, which drivers and barriers are within those communities of cybersecurity adoption? So what encourages a startup company to work on their cybersecurity, and what prevents them from doing so? And then most importantly, in the context of the whole future resilience concept, we wanted to know what the future of cybersecurity landscape is going to look like. So on one hand, what the threat landscape will be like, what are the dangers, what are the threats of the future, and on the other hand, what are the policies that we can use and utilize to tackle those challenges and those threats in the next 5 to 10 years. The initial idea for the project actually came out of the strategic document that EU Commission published, called the EU Economic Security Strategy. And one of the four pillars of economic security is technological independence. Why? Well, because European Union is at an interesting crossroads, or has been for the past 5 years. So during COVID, we learned that our supply chains from China, from the East, are quite fragile. And when the ports in China closed, technology prices in Europe skyrocketed. And then on the other hand, we have our traditional development and tech partners in the USA, in the West. But to put the politics aside, we can all agree that the times and the current administration does not really help with the uncertainty of what is going on with our alliances and how dependent we can be on the West. So Europe has been going on the path of technological independence for the past couple of years. However, we have to consider who is really the driver of technological development in Europe. So we have, of course, the universities and research centers in the first place, but in the second place are startups and small and medium-sized businesses. And a logical consequence of being more technologically dependent from East and West is the fact that those companies who are responsible for technology development are going to be more exposed to cyber threats from both East and West. We also have to acknowledge the digitalization of all societal levels. So cybersecurity has become a global challenge because we deal with digitalization in our private lives, we deal with it in our public lives, and the threats in cyberspace has become more and more wide. We do not really know where they are going to come from. Also because of the rapid technological advancements, which brings uncertainty. So just if we think about what is going on currently with the AI, who knows what is going to happen in the next 5 years. And this might be at least manageable if you're a larger company that has the resources to tackle it. However, if you're a startup community, you lack the resources, so human, material, financial. The perceived vulnerability is still quite low. Even though that research shows that companies have begun to understand the importance of cybersecurity in the past years a bit more, the perceived vulnerability is still low. They try to focus on their core business areas. So especially with startups, they just want to beat their competitors to the market. And then the policy and legislation is also quite complex if you are somebody who's not really from the field. And when I said that up until now I have been talking primarily about startups, however, quite quickly we have shifted our scope to be more wide, to also include other small and medium-sized enterprises. Because when we did our first study, we actually saw that the barriers that startups face are completely the same that the barriers that other more established, however small, technological companies also face. So quite quickly after the start of our project, we have shifted or broadened our focus to the to other small companies as well. As far as the methods goes, we knew right from the beginning that we are going to have to gather a lot of data. So we have chosen a mixed method approach. We have utilized literature reviews of scientific papers, of expert papers, of policies and legislations. We did the structured studies, primarily surveys and interviews among the SMEs, startups, and other stakeholders. We did 2 in-person workshops with stakeholders. We also did a couple of online stakeholder brainstorming sessions, more on that later. We did foresight sessions with our future resilience mentors, primarily with Martin, and then also dissemination activities were engaged in the latter part of the project. And based on these methods, we used 4 larger groups of evidence. So we leaned quite a lot on national and EU policies, which of course included policies from the knowledge base, but we also went broader. Then we utilized scientific studies and raw research data, which especially with the cybersecurity in SMEs, there was quite a lot of raw data. But the biggest bulk of evidence that we used was actually the data that we have gathered within our own project activities. So mainly within the studies that we did and with the workshops that we conducted, but as well just with the informal conversation with stakeholders and policymakers. And a smaller portion of data was also gathered out of media outlets. I'm not going to go through all the stakeholders, nor are all the stakeholders written down here, but the stakeholder matrix was one of the first things that we did within the project, and it was updated throughout the project. In the right top corner, you can see the most important stakeholders that we have identified and engaged in workshops and with dissemination activities. So Slovenian Ministry of Digital Transformation was one of the most important. Then, of course, all public universities of Slovenia. Here are written the two biggest ones, so University of Maribor and University of Ljubljana. Then we also engaged Slovenian Chamber of Commerce and Chamber of Craft and Small Business of Slovenia. A really important partner in the project was Government Information Security Office, which is a governmental agency or office that is responsible for cybersecurity policies. We have worked a lot with them in the workshops, and then we also engaged security service providers, both from private sector as well as from public sector. However, the response for private sector was overwhelming, or quite better than from public sector, and of course the startup support organizations as well. To give a quick overview or timeline of the activities, so the project started in February in 2024 with the stakeholder analysis. Then in March and April, we did the study in the tech community. And in May 24, based on the results on the study, we did the first in-person workshop. Then after the summer break, we had our scenario building phase in September and October, where we did scenario building with Martin, and we also did online session with stakeholders where we discussed the cybersecurity implications in those future scenarios. In November 24, we did the knowledge base analysis and the second in-person workshop. And then in February and March 25, we started with final communication with stakeholders and policymakers with dissemination activities. But we also developed then policy solutions and direction for policymakers. And in April and May 25, there was a reporting phase, and we also started drafting one policy brief, which, yes, Matthias, I know I'm still in debt to you, but I promise that you will get it soon. Okay, so as far as framing the problem goes, I have already mentioned that the idea of cybersecurity arose from the challenge of technological independence and wider economic security of the EU. And first of all, we did the survey with the Institute and University of Maribor among the stakeholders in tech communities, where we basically wanted to see which barriers are currently there that prevent those stakeholders to adopt cybersecurity solutions. And as mentioned before, the barriers are virtually the same across all the small companies in Slovenia, which form, I think, 65% or 70% of all companies. So the main barriers are, of course, connected with finances. The companies do not have neither, let's say, adequate internal financial resources or external financial incentives. The quite a big barrier is the complexity of implementation. They do not know where to start, so they just do not start. There is a lack of trained experts on the market. If you would like to employ somebody, it's really hard to get somebody who has the knowledge and is experienced enough. Then there is lack of cybersecurity support environment, or at least the companies do not know where to search for it. And again, as mentioned before, legislation complexity and lack of knowledge is quite a huge barrier as well. So these general barriers were then used at the first workshop that we did with around 25 participants from across various stakeholder groups. And basically at the first workshop, we presented those barriers to the participants, put them into smaller groups, and asked them to, let's say, envision what future events or what future factors or what factors could impact those barriers to be even more present in the future. What would be the future development of those cybersecurity challenges? And what we came up with at the first workshop is this impact uncertainty matrix of factors or events that could impact the ability or further impact the ability of companies, SMEs, to engage in cybersecurity related activities in the futures. So you see that global conflicts, legislation complexity, rapid technological advancements and development, cyber wars, recession, inflation, are factors that have been deemed as the most important or the most critical. Of course, here are not all the factors. We just wanted to show you the most critical ones. We also had one outlier that we had a good laugh about the solar storms, because, you know, if a solar storm happens, everything is fried. So there's no really need for cybersecurity. But we were encouraged to think outside the box a little bit as well. And those factors were then used as a baseline for future scenario development. Obviously, we could not prepare 20 scenarios where each factor would have its own scenario, but what we tried to do was develop 4 scenarios where we would include the most of those factors as possible. So here we worked quite closely with our foresight mentors, with the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, and we also did short brainstorming sessions with the stakeholder groups, basically to develop the cybersecurity implication for each scenario. So these were the 4 scenarios that were developed with collaboration, in collaboration with Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. And what we did was we used 2 larger factors as a baseline and then built all scenarios around them. So we tried to imagine a world where, first of all, the financial stability and then the geopolitical stability play the biggest role. So you can see on the top left corner, for example, we have a situation or we have a scenario where Slovenia is in a good financial position. The EU works as a coherent unit. However, we have geopolitical conflicts, we have protectionism, we have issues with cyber warfare and misinformation. Cybercrime is on the rise. And then next one would be where we have geopolitical conflicts and weak economy. Then we have 2 with, and then the other 2 are with good geopolitical situation. However, in one case we have the we have the economic crisis, and on the other hand we had the good economic situation. So those scenarios were then used as a base for the second workshop, which was done in November. Participants were then separated into 4 groups, and each group got their own scenario. And first they tried to imagine what the cybersecurity would look like in each of the scenario. So we did scenario refinement and the SWOT analysis for every scenario, with emphasis on threat and weakness identification. And in the second part of the workshop, we did the policy solutions. So before the workshop itself, we actually did the knowledge base analysis, where we have identified 20 suitable policies that could be used in one of the scenarios. And those policies were then presented to the participants, and we did winds tunneling exercise, and in the end we came up with 5 policy solutions that had elements that could be used across all or 4 scenarios that we have envisioned in the workshop itself. So the policy solutions, 3 of them, the first 3 that you can see, were developed were developed from scratch, and then the 4th and the 5th one were taken and adapted a little bit from the knowledge base. So the first policy that we have recommended, and those are all national policies, would be the joint ventures for research and development, where the Slovenian sovereign fund would invest in the emerging technological startups to increase the technological independence that then the national systems can use, and could reinvest the profits into other promising startups and, of course, the public services. Then the cybersecurity talent pool was a policy which was meant to, or is meant to, increase the general cybersecurity awareness, so to include cybersecurity in the lifelong learning, to basically equip every citizen with the basic knowledge of cybersecurity, because if you are protected in your private life, this also impacts the cybersecurity in your workspace, and then further on impacts the national security. And then we also did small grants program, which is adaptation of the policy that is already existing in Slovenia, which is the cybersecurity vouchers. However, we broadened the scope of those vouchers a little bit, because right now they're quite closed within their scope. And then we adapted 2 policies from the knowledge base, which were, the first one was SOTER Cybersecurity Competence Training Framework, which is a policy that encourages competence-based approach to cybersecurity, so everyone can take part in training, no matter their previous skills, which ensures that everyone could or can build their cybersecurity skills, reducing the need for broader pool of cybersecurity experts and building on societal resilience. And then the second one was Concordia, Cybersecurity Roadmap for Europe, which is focused on strengthening Europe's cybersecurity capabilities and digital independence, as it addresses European dependency on non-European digital technologies by promoting coordinated research, policy, harmonization, investment, and cybersecurity education. But then we wanted to use our findings from the workshop for one step further, and basically create the direction for policymakers, which would help them see cybersecurity as in the scope of societal and national economic cyber resilience. And within this, we identified 8 key areas or dimensions that action needs to be taken if we want to ensure the cyber resilience of the national economic system. So basically what this means is that policymakers should include all 8 of those areas into consideration when they are either preparing a holistic cybersecurity policies, or they should have an understanding that changes in each of those 8 areas positively or negatively impact on cyber resilience. So the areas are trust in technology and digitalization of general public. Then we have education and training, again, in cybersecurity topics of general public. Then technological independence is, of course, very important. Funding schemes and economic safeguards, which gives us the baseline for investments in cybersecurity. Then threat intelligence and risk assessment is another important one, because we have to act intelligence-based, not spending money just everywhere at random. Public-private partnerships, especially between the universities and public research facilities and private sectors. Harmonization of law and debureaucratization of public procurement, because we can give out, let's say, vouchers for small companies, but if they're quite hard to obtain, then it's really no good, because they are just not going to apply for them. At the end, we wanted to point out again that cybersecurity is just intertwined with all aspects of modern life, and the challenges that we have identified cannot be solved with a singular policy, but we need more policies in the 8 areas that we have listed before. And of course, cyber resilience of the economic system can only be achieved if we build it on the level of whole society, because there's this trickle down effect of every individual who might, I'm giving you a bizarre example, but if somebody has a smart fridge at home and it gets infected because children play, video games at inappropriate places, it can have a trickle down effect to a company getting hit with ransomware that produces a company that produces national security critical systems. So what we are particularly proud of is that the project brought together stakeholders from private sectors, academia, and policymaker, which, yes, of course, they get together often at some conferences, but within our project, they were able to sit down around the same table, discuss their challenges, share their experience, and it had a really good outcome on our results. The project also resulted in concrete and usable policy solutions, which were passed on to policymakers, and we have already received very positive feedback, especially from the Government Office for Information Security. Since they're a quite new department, they're willing to take in all the knowledge that they can get, so they have been a great partner throughout the whole project as a policymakers. And of course, we also did quite a lot of work on raising the awareness on the topic. Basically, we did series of informative events. So we already did some trainings for SMEs and startups within the first workshop that we did. Then we were also quite heavily involved with the Cyber Tsunami event in October last year. And then again, we prepared useful policy solutions that can be used primarily on the Slovenian national level, but can be transferred to the European level as well. So that would be all from my side as well. Thank you very much for the attention.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Luca, for this very interesting and very cool argument, especially today. Thank you. Martin, please, if you wish to give some comments, the floor is yours.
I have a question I would like both Anna and Luca to consider. So I'd like you to reflect on the time horizon and stakeholder engagement. So I'm thinking that in terms of fictions, workers in general are not considering the future, at least not the long-term future. So so how to what are the constraints in terms of time horizon, in terms of engagement of workers? And for Luca, cybersecurity is a notoriously fast-moving area where things are going very fast. Also, here, in terms of engaging stakeholders, what is the restrictions on time horizon? So for both of you, I mean, if we're thinking about 10 years ahead, how would that change the design and the engagement of people? And then you can go first.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. So we see that there is this tension where on the one hand, there is a lot of call for full automation and digitalization, but at the same time, we see that there are a lot of risks to, and Luca talks about this a little bit, to getting the resources that you need even to create this technology. So you can go to full automation because you don't have people to work. But at the same time, we expect there can be an increase in more craft skills. So this would be a tension that would be interesting to explore further, and we expect this to be more visible in 10 years' time with our stakeholders, and our operators would be much older than they are now, which is a second thing, and would have a different outlook on things. Even already when we were doing the workshops in future resilience, some of the workers retired throughout the process. So we expect this to be a greater and more visible challenge. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Anna. I think if I look on the national level on Slovenia, in the past 5 years, cybersecurity has just become this topic that we can even see it in the traditional media. So it's getting reported on way more, and this trend is of course going to continue with the ever increasing digitalization, new technologies that are coming, but also there's some traditional forms of crime are also moving to cyberspace. So every prediction is going in the direction that the cybersecurity will be more and more important. As well, on the policy level, Slovenia has just recently passed the new law on information security, and with European directives such as NIS2, we have even more, let's say, the challenges and the responsibilities on the national level to ensure a safer working environment in cyberspace, meaning that the number of stakeholders is also increasing. But if we look on the European level, for example, Martin, you have been at the second workshop in November last year, and this was just around the election in the USA. So if we imagine that we held that workshop today, and this is half a year later, a little bit more, I think that the results and the discussion would be quite different, because so many things have changed unexpectedly, or maybe we were a bit naive as well. But as far as the international cooperation goes, we saw when we were doing scenarios, the geopolitical climate is really, really important. So I think that it's going to depend quite a lot on the if I may say, a world order that is going to be here in the next 5 years.
Thank you. I'll leave it. I think let's move to Q&A and see if we have any questions from the people that are attending.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think that we just have received, we have received from Anna a video in the chat. Thank you, Anna. No, I think that there are no questions on the queue in the chat, but Matthias made one for Luke. What were the main challenge in the involvement of policymakers and how they reached to work with foreign in the field of cyber resilience? Luke, please, if you want to answer.
So as far as policymaker goes, we had the classic challenge of availability. They were really, really, really interested to collaborate in the topic, especially the governmental Office for Information Security, which is anyway the most important policymaker. However, they are still quite a young office, and as mentioned quite a few times today in my presentation, they lack people. They lack experts there, so it was hard for them to allocate people to actually come to the workshops. That is partially one of the reasons that we did not have an online workshop, but we did a series of brainstorming sessions so that we could ensure that everybody was available. And the work with Foresight was actually really positively received, not only with the policymakers, but with everybody who came who were then invited to the brainstorming session and who came to the second workshop. And Martin was a really good facilitator as well. So it was, how should I say, a twist from their normal way of thinking, I think. And the feedback that we have received is definitely that foresight should be included way more in the policy making process, and not just with cybersecurity, but with other topics as well.
Thank you very much, Luke. Actually, I have a question for each of you. One for Anna. That it was really interesting to see like the process of your work. It was super clear, but I was surprised a bit about that. You said that you couldn't reach that much the policymaker, and I would like to ask you why happened and why do you think happened. And the other question is for Luke, and it is related more on your stakeholder matrix. I find it really interesting, and I would like to know more about it. How did you build it, and like the process, and how this matrix help you to did the work and process doing the work? Thank you. Maybe Hannah?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Maybe I didn't explain so well. We did not have, perhaps compared to other labs, so much contact with the policymakers. I think that first, because we didn't have, this is not usually a field that we work in or stakeholders that we interact a lot with, but we did, in our experience, we did a lot of cold contacts and people answered and they came to the mutual learning sessions as well. And so this was surprising for us. So maybe we did not have such larger numbers as other labs, but we had a positive response. So I think that was positive, actually.
Thank you. Luke?
So yeah, the stakeholder matrix was one of the first things that we did when the project started, and it was a live document because we have updated it with the duration of the project. For example, at the beginning of the project, it was directed way more to the startup communities, to the stakeholders there. But when we have broadened our scope, we included the stakeholders wider. It proved to be a really useful tool, because then we were able to keep track of which stakeholder, for example, to engage for the to invite to the webinars, to the workshops, which stakeholders to just keep informed, who to share our deliverables with. It was really great to just be able to track and to see also who we have contacted, and to also keep track of our dissemination activities and engagement activities.
Thank you very much. Maybe Martin, do you want to add something or ask a question?
Yeah, it's really a question for Anna. I'm thinking sometimes you see policies being made that one would have liked to have been tested in real world settings before they're made. I'm thinking the approach that you took. Do you think this could be used as a policy testing as well? So turning it a little bit around, instead of creating the policies and suggesting it upwards, then having a bottom-up approach, actually testing the top-down approach.
Oh my. You mean testing, like using our tool, like in speculative design, and you mean in that sense?
Yeah, I'm thinking sometimes, let me get an example. In Denmark, there was this idea that classes one should have kids with ADHD and other diagnoses. They should be part of, not ADHD, but more severe diagnosis should be part of the regular class. And that had some unwanted consequences. So similarly, testing policies, I'm thinking in terms of the stakeholder here and the workers, how would they react to certain kinds of policies? So changing that into their setting and then getting that information back into policymakers, so they can make revisions to those policy suggestions that they otherwise would have made.
Okay, so maybe I can tell you a couple of things about this, and that also then connect to Matthias' question. So there is still another level before policy making. That is, so in our case, it was the level of the CEO. So this was a multinational company, and we, at the end of the project, we presented the results to the CEO and other managers, and his interest was, okay, so I can use this method to test something. So along the lines that you were proposing, so not a policy level, but within the company, which is pretty large. So they employ thousands of people. So we hadn't thought about that, and so this was interesting to him, and it was also interesting not just as testing, but also as a mechanism, the process itself of building a certain kind of culture inside the company, an experimentation, innovation culture. So this was interesting, and I think that other companies see interest in this, because we had at least one invitation of a very large company to run similar workshops with their workers that had nothing to do with manufacturing. They were tech workers. So this was a positive sign at that level. So regarding policy, I think we are currently working with colleagues from Carnegie Mellon University who have been doing similar work on the role of artifacts and speculative design on policy making, particularly with cleaning and janitorial work, housekeepers, so workers who generally don't have a strong voice to connect them to policy making levels. And so we are coming up with some ideas precisely to do these tests. So come up with ideas of policy instruments and testing them with them. And that, I think it's quite interesting that you did that question, because I don't know the answer to that, whether if it will work, but we're trying to work on that direction. One thing I'll say is that the artifacts, the objects, I don't know what the impact on the audience today was, but the artifacts, they speak a lot in a lot of ways, and they are very rich to add to any report or any text. So they are very powerful in a lot of different ways, and we're trying to actually publish a paper to explain that power. So we think we will continue exploring the role of design and speculative design in that sense. I hope I've answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. And as I see, you already answered also to Matthias' question. If there are no further questions, maybe we can close now the webinar, and just remember to sign in for the next one. That will be the last one, the 16th of July, same hour. So please remember to sign in and be with us for the last webinar. Thank you very much to all of you, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.